Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. My name is Julian, and this is the story of how I discovered the truth about my girlfriend, the one I was ready to spend my life with, and how I walked away from everything without looking back on the day I planned to ask her to marry me. To understand how it all fell apart, I need to take you back to the beginning, to the moment our paths crossed and the life we built together started to take shape. Her name was Lila, and we met 4 years ago in a small coastal town called Port Haven, where we were both finishing our degrees at a local university. It was a warm spring evening, and a mutual friend had dragged us to a beach bonfire to celebrate the end of exams. The air smelled of salt and smoke, and Lila was standing by the fire, laughing at some joke I couldn't hear. When our friend introduced us, her smile was the first thing I noticed, bright, unguarded, like she was inviting the world to laugh along with her. We talked for hours that night about everything and nothing, our favorite books, the worst professors, and the dreams we had for life after graduation. There was an ease to it, like we'd known each other forever. After that night, we didn't let distance pull us apart like it did for so many others. Most of our classmates scattered after graduation, chasing jobs or new cities, but Lila and I stayed close. We'd meet for coffee, go on late-night drives along the coast, and text each other memes at 2 a.m. Over time, those moments turned into something deeper. We became each other's anchor, the person you call when the day's been too long or the world feels too heavy. About a year and a half ago, we took a big step. We decided to move in together. Lila had just landed a job at a marketing firm in the nearby city of Crestview. It was a high-energy role, the kind that demanded long hours, weekend brainstorming sessions, and after-work drinks with the team to build chemistry. I was working as a graphic designer, mostly freelance, so my schedule was more flexible, but her job was a whirlwind. We knew living together would be the best way to stay connected despite her chaotic work life. So, we pooled our savings and found a cozy apartment in Crestview, a place with big windows and a view of the city skyline. It wasn't just about splitting rent or sharing a space. It was about building something real, something that said, "We're in this together." For me, it was more than that. It was the first step toward a future I could already see, a life with Lila, maybe a ring, maybe a family someday. I didn't say it out loud because I didn't want to rush her, but in my heart, I was all in. Things were good for a while. We'd cook dinner together, argue over whose turn it was to do the dishes, and fall asleep watching old movies on the couch. But a few months into her new job, something shifted. Lila started talking a lot about a coworker named Marcus. At first, it was just small mentions, how he cracked a joke during a meeting, how he helped her nail a tricky client pitch, how he was so good at thinking on his feet. I noticed the way her eyes lit up when she talked about him, the way her voice carried a warmth that used to be reserved for me. I brushed it off at first. She's allowed to have work friends, I told myself. She's just excited about her job. But then the mentions became a pattern, and I started hearing his name more than I wanted to. It wasn't just that she talked about him. It was the little comparisons that slipped into our conversations, subtle but sharp. "Marcus always knows how to handle stress," she'd say when I was venting about a tough client. Or, "Marcus said the team needs to think bigger, and he's so right." I'd nod, swallow the unease, and tell myself I was being paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure boyfriend who gets jealous over nothing. Besides, I was already planning to propose. I'd been saving up for a ring, picturing the moment I'd ask her to be mine forever. Getting worked up over a coworker felt like a betrayal of that vision, so I kept quiet. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, and I'd planned a quiet dinner at home. Nothing fancy, just our usual routine to reconnect after long work days. I made her favorite pasta, set the table, and waited. 6 o'clock became 7, then 8. No texts, no calls. Finally, around 9, Lila walked through the door, looking exhausted. "Work was insane," she said, tossing her bag on the couch. "We had to stay late to finish a campaign." I asked if she was okay, and she nodded, mumbling about deadlines before heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when her phone, left on the coffee table, lit up with a notification. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen was right there, and the message preview caught my eye. It was from Marcus. Had fun tonight. Wish you could have stayed longer. My stomach dropped. Fun? Stayed longer? She just told me she was at the office, grinding through work. I glanced at the phone again, but it locked before I could see more. When Lila came back, I tried to stay calm. Hey, can you unlock your phone? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her face changed instantly, defensive, almost panicked. Why? She shot back. I told her about the message, about how it didn't add up with what she'd said. What's going on with you and Marcus? I asked, not accusing, just searching for clarity. She rolled her eyes, said I was overreacting, that they were just co-workers who'd been at the same meeting. But when I asked her to show me the messages, she refused. You should trust me, she said, her voice sharp. I don't need to prove anything. The argument escalated from there. Voices raised, words we couldn't take back. She stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door, and I sat there, staring at the half-eaten pasta on the table. The silence that followed was louder than our fight. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the first real crack in the life we'd built, the one I thought was unbreakable. What was Lila hiding? Was I wrong to doubt her, or was my gut trying to tell me something I wasn't ready to face? One thing was clear. The truth was closer than I thought, and it was about to change everything. After that night, with the phone and our first real fight, the air in our Crestview apartment felt different, like someone had turned down the warmth and left a chill we couldn't shake. Lila and I weren't the same. We move around each other like ghosts, polite but distant, saying just enough to keep the peace but not enough to bridge the gap. I kept replaying her refusal to show me the messages, the way her voice had sharpened when I asked about Marcus. It wasn't just the words she said, it was the way she said them, like she was guarding something fragile. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but my gut wouldn't let me. The days that followed were a study in silence. Lila started keeping her phone closer, always face down or tucked in her pocket, like it held secrets she couldn't risk me seeing. Her work hours stretched longer, and the excuses piled up. Client dinner ran late, she'd say, or the team needed to brainstorm over drinks. I nodded, bit my tongue, and told myself I was overthinking it. But the pattern was undeniable. She'd come home later and later, sometimes with a faint whiff of wine on her breath, her eyes avoiding mine. I didn't confront her again, not after how our last argument ended. Instead, I watched, and the watching became its own kind of torture. I started noticing other things, too. Small things, but they added up, like how she'd smile at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, or how she'd take calls in the other room, her voice low and muffled. Once, I overheard her laugh, a bright, unguarded laugh I hadn't heard in weeks, and when I asked who she was talking to, she said, just a friend from work. Not Marcus, she insisted, but the name hung in the air anyway. I didn't push because pushing felt like admitting I was losing her, and I wasn't ready to face that. I kept working on my freelance projects, burying myself in designs to distract from the growing unease. But at night, when the apartment was quiet and Lila was still out, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was being paranoid or if she was slipping away. I still wanted to propose. The ring was hidden in a sock drawer, a simple band I'd spent months saving for. I'd imagine the moment I'd ask her, how her face would light up, how we'd laugh about these rough patches years from now. But that fantasy was starting to feel like a dream I was clinging to alone. Then, about 3 weeks after our fight, Lila did something unexpected. I was in the living room, sketching on my tablet, when she came home early, actually early for once. She sat across from me on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, and said, "Julian, we need to talk." Her voice was steady, but there was a weight to it, like she'd rehearsed this. My heart sank, but I nodded, setting my tablet aside. She looked at me, her eyes softer than they'd been in weeks. "I know things have been weird," she said. "I can feel it, too. The distance. The tension. I hate it." She paused, like she was choosing her words carefully. "I know you've been worried about Marcus. I swear, there's nothing going on. He's just a friend, someone I work with. But I see how it's affecting you, and I don't want that." Then she said something that caught me off guard. "If it's bothering you this much, I'll stop talking to him outside of work. I'll keep it professional. I don't want to lose what we have." Her words hit me like a lifeline. For weeks, I'd been drowning in doubts, convincing myself she was pulling away, that I was losing her to someone else. But here she was, sitting in front of me, saying she'd choose me over him. It felt like a promise, like she was fighting for us. I wanted to believe her so badly. I told her I appreciated it, that I didn't want to lose her either. We talked a little more, and for the first time in weeks, she hugged me, her arms tight around me like they used to be. That night, we ordered takeout, watched a movie, and laughed like we hadn't in months. It felt like a reset, like maybe we could find our way back. For a while, things did get better. Lila was home more, her phone wasn't glued to her hand, and she seemed lighter, like she was trying. We started planning little things again, weekend hikes, a road trip to the mountains. I let myself believe we'd turn a corner. I even started thinking about the proposal again, picturing it at the Crestview Summer Arts Festival, an annual event that filled the city with live music, colorful murals, and food stalls. It was the kind of place Lila loved, vibrant and alive, and I could see myself getting down on one knee under the string lights, her saying yes in front of a crowd of strangers cheering us on. But there was a part of me, quiet but persistent, that wondered if I was seeing what I wanted to see. Lila's warmth felt real, but sometimes I'd catch her staring at her phone, her expression unreadable. Or she'd mention work in a way that felt too vague, too careful. I pushed those thoughts down, told myself I was being paranoid again. She'd promised to keep Marcus at a distance, and I had to trust her. Doubt was a choice, I told myself, and I chose to believe in us. A week before the festival, I brought it up casually while we were eating breakfast. "Hey, the Summer Arts Festival is next weekend. You free?" She looked up from her coffee, her face apologetic. "I don't know, Julian. Work's been insane, and there's this team thing I might have to do." I nodded, trying not to let disappointment show. "No worries," I said. "Maybe we can do something else soon." She smiled, reached for my hand, and said, "Let's plan something special when my schedule clears up. Just us." Her voice was warm, and I took it as a sign she cared, that she wanted to protect what we had. But as the festival approached, a nagging feeling grew. Was she really at work? Or was there something she wasn't telling me? The answer was coming, and it would hit me harder than I ever expected. What did I miss in those weeks of fragile hope? And what would I find when I least expected it? The week leading up to the Crestview Summer Arts Festival felt like a tightrope walk. Lila and I were better, on the surface at least. We'd laugh over breakfast, plan evenings that sometimes actually happened, and for a moment I could almost convince myself we'd weather the storm. But there were still moments that gnawed at me. The way Lila's phone would buzz, and she'd angle it away from me, or how she'd get quiet when I asked about her day. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that she'd promised to keep Marcus at a distance, that she'd chosen us. But doubt has a way of lingering, like a shadow you can't outrun. The festival was a big deal in Crestview, a weekend where the downtown streets transformed into a kaleidoscope of art, music, and food. Local bands played on makeshift stages, artists painted murals on brick walls, and couples danced under string lights as the smell of grilled food filled the air. I'd been picturing it as the perfect place to propose to Lila, vibrant, joyful, a memory we'd carry forever. But when she told me she'd likely be stuck at work, I let the idea slip, telling myself we'd find another moment. She'd even asked me to wait for her, to save the festival for a time we could go together. "Let's make it special," she'd said, her voice soft and convincing. I took it as a sign she cared, that she wanted us to share something meaningful. So I agreed to skip it. The day of the festival, a Saturday, Lila left early, saying she had a team meeting that might run late. "Don't wait up," she said, kissing me on the cheek before heading out the door. I nodded, trying to ignore the familiar unease creeping in. I spent the morning working on a freelance project, but by afternoon, I was restless. That's when my friend Sam called, his voice buzzing with excitement. "Yo, Julian, you hitting the festival? It's wild out here." I told him I wasn't going, that Lila had work and we'd planned to do something else later. He pushed back, confused. "Man, you love this stuff. Just come for a bit. Bring Lila if she gets free." I hesitated, feeling a pang of guilt. Lila had asked me not to go without her, but she wasn't even here. What harm could it do? In the end, I gave in. I told myself it was just a few hours, a chance to clear my head. Sam and a couple of other friends met me downtown, and for a while, I let myself get swept up in the energy. The streets were alive with color. Murals half finished on walls, kids running with painted faces, and music pulsing through the crowd. We grabbed beers, watched a band play, and I started to relax, laughing with the guys like I hadn't in weeks. It felt good to be out, to forget the tension at home for a little while. Then everything changed. Sam nudged me, pointing across the street. "Hey, isn't that Lila?" he said, squinting through the crowd. My heart stopped. I followed his gaze, and there she was, standing near a food truck, her hair catching the glow of the string lights. She wasn't alone. Marcus was with her, his arms slung casually around her shoulders. They were laughing, their heads close like they were in their own little world. I watched, frozen, as he leaned down and brushed a kiss against her forehead. She didn't pull away. She leaned into it, her smile soft and unguarded. The world tilted. My friends were saying something, but their voices were muffled like I was underwater. All I could see was Lila and Marcus, moving through the festival like a couple, oblivious to the fact that I was standing there, watching my life unravel. She told me she was at work. She'd asked me not to come. And now, here she was with the guy she swore was just a friend, the guy she promised to keep at a distance. Every word, every promise felt like a lie. I didn't move toward them. I couldn't. My chest was tight, my hands shaking, but I didn't want a scene. I turned to Sam and the others, my voice flat. "I'm out," I said, and before they could argue, I walked away. The festival's noise faded behind me as I headed to my car, my phone buzzing in my pocket. I ignored it. I drove home in silence. The image of Lila and Marcus burned into my mind. When I got to the apartment, I didn't stop to think. I grabbed a duffel bag and started packing. Clothes, laptop, anything I could carry. The ring, still hidden in the sock drawer, stayed where it was. I didn't want it. Not anymore. By the time I checked into a rundown motel on the edge of Crestview, it was past midnight. I sat on the lumpy bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. My phone kept buzzing. Lila, probably wondering where I was. I turned it off. I didn't want to hear her voice, her excuses. Not yet. I poured myself a drink from a bottle I'd grabbed on the way, letting the burn of it dull the ache in my chest. I didn't cry. I just sat there, replaying every moment, every red flag I'd ignored, wondering how I'd been so blind. What had Lila been doing all those late nights? How long had this been going on? And what would happen when she realized I'd seen her? The answers were coming, whether I was ready for them or not. The motel room smelled of stale smoke and cheap air freshener, but it was a refuge from the chaos I'd left behind at the Crestview Summer Arts Festival. I woke up the morning after seeing Lila with Marcus, my head pounding from the whiskey I'd drowned my thoughts in the night before. My mouth was dry, my stomach churned, and the image of Lila leaning into Marcus's kiss played on a loop in my mind. I turned off my phone after leaving the festival, unwilling to face whatever messages were waiting. But now, sitting on the edge of the motel bed, I knew I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I needed to figure out what came next. I powered on my phone, and the notifications hit like a tidal wave. Messages from Lila, one after another, filled the screen. "Julian, where are you? I got home, and your stuff is gone. Please answer. I'm freaking out, call me." There were missed calls, too, and a voicemail I didn't have the stomach to play. Then, about an hour after the first wave, the tone shifted. "Sam told me you were at the festival. Did you see me? Please, let me explain." Her words were laced with panic, and the voicemails that followed were worse. Her voice cracked, thick with tears, begging me to talk to her, swearing it wasn't what it looked like. My friends were texting, too. "Sam, man, you just vanished. You okay?" Another friend, Mia. "Julian, what happened last night? Call me." I appreciated their concern, but I wasn't ready to talk, not even to them. I took a deep breath and called my freelance client coordinator instead, the one person I could handle speaking to. I told her I needed a week off to deal with a personal emergency. She was sympathetic, told me to take the time I needed, and that small act of understanding gave me a sliver of stability. I hung up, turned my phone off again, and force myself to focus. I couldn't go back to the apartment. Not yet, maybe not ever. I needed a plan, a way to move forward without the weight of Lila's betrayal crushing me. By noon, I was on my laptop, searching for short-term rentals in Crestview. I found a small studio on the other side of the city, nothing fancy, but it was available immediately and within my budget. I called the landlord, arranged a viewing for that afternoon, and secured the place by evening. It was a bare-bones apartment, white walls, a single window overlooking a parking lot, but it was mine, a clean slate. I moved what little I'd brought from the motel that night, leaving the rest of my things, including the engagement ring, in the apartment I'd shared with Lila. I didn't want anything that tied me to that life. For the next few days, I kept my phone off most of the time, checking it only briefly to coordinate with clients or respond to friends with vague assurances that I was fine. Lila's messages kept coming, a mix of desperation and apologies. "I messed up, Julian, but it's not what you think. I can't lose you like this. Please, just hear me out." I didn't reply. Her words felt like echoes of the promises she'd made before, promises I believed, only to end up here. I didn't trust myself to respond without anger, and I didn't trust her to tell me the truth. On the fourth day, I was settling into the studio, unpacking my laptop and a few clothes, when there was a knock at the door. My heart sank. No one knew where I was except the landlord and Sam, who I'd told in case of an emergency. I opened the door, and there was Lila, her eyes red and puffy, her hair pulled back messily. She must have got my new address from Sam, who probably thought he was helping. "Julian," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, just talk to me." I stood there, gripping the doorframe, every instinct telling me to shut her out. She looked small, fragile, nothing like the confident woman I'd seen laughing with Marcus at the festival. "What do you want, Lila?" I asked, my voice colder than I meant it to be. She flinched, but she didn't back down. "I need you to know what happened," she said. "It wasn't what you think. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt you." I didn't let her in. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and crossed my arms. "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me why you lied about work. Why you were with him. Why you asked me to stay away from the festival." Her eyes welled up, and she started talking, her words tumbling out in a rush. She said she'd been working late with Marcus on a project, that they'd gone to the festival after because the team was there, that it was just a group thing that got out of hand. She admitted she'd gotten too close to him, that she'd been flattered by his attention, but she swore it wasn't romantic, that the kiss was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I listened, but every word felt like a dodge. She'd lied before, about her late nights, about Marcus, and now she expected me to believe this? I looked at her, searching for the woman I'd planned to marry, but all I saw was someone I didn't recognize. "You made your choice," I said finally, "and I'm making mine." I turned to go back inside, but she grabbed my arm, her voice desperate. "Julian, please, don't throw us away." I pulled away, stepped inside, and closed the door without another word. Her muffled sobs followed me through the wall, but I didn't open it again. I sat on the floor of my empty studio, my back against the door, and let the silence settle. Had I been too quick to walk away? Or was this the moment I finally started to save myself? One thing was certain. Lila wasn't done trying to reach me, and what she did next would change everything. The days after Lila showed up at my new studio apartment in Crestview were a blur of quiet determination. I'd shut the door on her, both literally and figuratively, and though her sobs had echoed through the wall that day, I didn't waver. Her words, her tears, her promises, they all felt like echoes of a past I no longer believed in. I'd spent months building a future in my mind, one where Lila and I were forever. But the festival had shattered that illusion. Now I was focused on rebuilding, piece by piece, a life that didn't depend on her. Lila didn't stop reaching out. Her texts came in waves, sometimes frantic, sometimes soft and pleading. "I know I hurt you, Julian, but I love you. We can fix this, I know we can. Please, just one more chance to talk." Over time, the messages grew sadder, more resigned. She wrote about how she missed our late-night talks, our shared dreams, how she'd never meant to throw it all away. She even sent a long voicemail, her voice heavy with regret, admitting she'd let her connection with Marcus go too far, that it was a mistake born out of stress and flattery, not love. She swore she'd cut him off completely, that she'd do anything to prove she was still the person I'd fallen for. I read her messages, listened to her voicemails, but I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I didn't trust her anymore. Trust isn't something you can rebuild with words alone, and Lila's words have lost their weight. Every time I thought about replying, I saw her at the festival, laughing with Marcus, leaning into his kiss. I saw the lies she'd told, the nights she'd come home late with vague excuses. I saw the ring, still sitting in that sock drawer, a symbol of a future that no longer existed. So, I let her texts pile up, unanswered, until they slowed to a trickle. I threw myself into my work, taking on more freelance projects to fill the silence of my new apartment. The studio was small, but it was starting to feel like home. I hung a few prints on the walls, bought a cheap coffee maker, and spent evenings sketching ideas for new designs. My friends checked in, and I started opening up to them bit by bit. Sam and Mia took me out for beers one night, listening as I finally told them everything. The doubts, the festival, the way Lila's lies had unraveled me. They didn't push me to forgive her or move on. They just listened, and that was enough. About 2 weeks after Lila's visit to my apartment, I had to go back to our old place to pick up some things I'd left behind. Books, a few clothes, and some design equipment I needed for work. I texted her to make sure she wouldn't be there, and she replied quickly, saying she'd be at the office. When I walked into the apartment, it felt like stepping into a memory. The furniture was the same, the photos of us still on the shelf, but it wasn't home anymore. I moved quickly, packing what I needed, and avoided looking at the sock drawer. I didn't want the ring. It wasn't mine anymore. As I was leaving, I found a note on the kitchen counter, written in Lila's handwriting. Julian, I know you're done, but I'll always love you. I'm so sorry. I stared at it for a moment, then folded it and slipped it into my pocket, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I didn't want to leave any part of myself behind. I walked out, locked the door, and dropped the key in the landlord's mailbox. That chapter was closed. Now, months later, I'm still finding my footing. Lila's texts have stopped, though I hear through mutual friends that she's struggling, that she's taken a new job in another city. Part of me feels a pang when I think of her, but it's not enough to pull me back. I've learned that love isn't enough to fix a broken foundation. Trust, once eroded, leaves nothing to build on. I don't hate her, but I don't miss her either. Not the way I used to. I miss the idea of us, the life I thought we'd have, but I'm starting to see that maybe that life was never real. I'm sharing this story because it's mine, but I know it's not just mine. Betrayal, doubt, the slow unraveling of something you thought was forever. It's a road too many of us walk. If I were in your shoes, I'd wonder what I'd do. Would I have confronted Lila at the festival, made a scene in front of everyone? Would I have listened to her explanations, given her that one more chance? Or would I have done what I did, walked away, cut the cord, and started over? I don't have the answers, but I know what felt right for me. So, I'm turning it over to you. What would you have done? How would you handle the moment when the person you love becomes a stranger? Thanks for hearing me out. If this story hit you, made you think, or reminded you of your own journey, let me know. I'm here, moving forward one step at a time.